Hello everybody, welcome to episode 69 of the PMD Tea Buyers Club. I'm your host, Dan De Silva. We are here on National Tea Day and I am going to be shooting a video. And I was meant to do this video actually yesterday, but I don't know, for whatever reason we couldn't shoot. But here I am, and it actually happens to work out to be National Tea Day. It's also the Queen's birthday, so happy birthday to the Queen, who's in lockdown in one of her palaces somewhere. And my tips on how to make a cup of tea. Now, this video is inspired by two reasons. Number one, I've been seeing a lot of posts about how to make tea. Personally, I think it's more a guide of how to butcher tea. And also because a friend of mine who's moved to using loose leaf tea recently messaged me after she bought her packets of loose leaf tea, and she said, when do I add the milk? And I said, well, when do you usually add the milk? She said, well, with my tea bag, and she got a teapot, I put my tea bag in the mug, I put the milk in, then I put the water in. Say what you want about the way that she's making her tea, but I thought I'd share my tips on how to make tea. So, tip number one on how to make tea. First of all, make sure you're using good tea. What does that mean? Go to pmdtea.com and go buy some fresh hand-picked tea, like this planter's mistress here. Tip number two, water. Now, go back, watch episode 4 of the PMD Tea Buyers Club, where I talk about the importance of water and how that changes the taste and flavor of a cup of tea. And water is crucial. So I live here in the south of England. We have very hard water here, very, very hard. I use bottled water, and that's the only thing I actually let into my kettle. So if I'm ever using the kettle, I use bottled water. Some of you are going to say, well, what if you're just boiling up some other stuff? Just normal water from the tap to use. We have a separate kettle for that. That's how insane we are about tea drinking in this house. So number one is buy good tea. Number two is use good water. If you don't want to use bottled water, filtered water is better if you live in a hard water area. If you live in areas like the north of England or in Scotland, you already have great water anyway. Step 3, use a teapot. I would always recommend using a teapot. You can do this using a mug. In fact, there's another episode on how to use a teepee. I've got a teepee here. This is a contraption that we sell off our website. If you're making tea for one, it's an excellent little thing that you can use. Very easy. Go watch the other episode. But if you're making tea using a teapot, in the old way, in the way that your granny and granddad did, what I would recommend is, now this is a half a litre teapot, and it'll make about 3 cups of tea. What I would recommend is you put 1 spoon and a bit. With our teas, to be honest, you don't need to use a lot of tea quantity. Now, people will tell you, oh look, you've got to, put one, a teaspoon per cup, and then add one for the pot. I'm trying to get this phone going because timers are very important. Now, water's just come off the boil. Add your hot water in to your pot. Fill it up to wherever you want it. Now I'm going to go virtually about 3/4 of the way. And the most important thing, immediately I put the timer on. So the timer's going to go for 5 minutes. That's how I like to have my planter's mistress. The most important thing that you should do is give the pot a good stir. Stir the teapot and let the leaf move around. Put the lid on. Very, very important to do those 2 bits. Even if you're using a mug and you're putting if you're putting your tea into the mug, if you're using a teepee and you're using one of these strainers, the reason why we have a lid is that when the lid stays on, your tea is able to brew. And most importantly, all the flavor and all the aroma in your tea doesn't evaporate out. It doesn't go out into the atmosphere. It stays in the pot, it stays in your cup, and it eventually turns up in your cup. So having your lid on is very, very important. I like to put my tea on for 5 minutes for this particular tea. I would recommend that you brew, if you're making black tea, these are black tea brewing instructions. Make sure you brew your tea for at least 3 minutes. Minimum 3 minutes, maximum 5 minutes. And the reason for it is that with black tea, you have, because of the type of manufacture process black tea goes over, you have a caramelized layer that forms on your actual black tea leaf. So you need to use 100 degrees Celsius boiling hot water to burn off that caramelized layer. So that's why you add boiling hot water to your tea leaf. By stirring it, you help agitate that process. That takes about 30 seconds. After that 30-second process is when all the goodness in tea comes out. This is where, you know, the theanines, the polyphenols, all the goodness, the antioxidants that you find in tea start to come out. And you need to give that a minimum of 3 minutes. From 3 minutes onwards, where you get theanine in the first 3 minutes, you start to get tannin coming through in the next 3 to 5 minutes. And this is where you'll start to get, the theanine gives you the sweetness, the tannin gives you the bitterness, and that's where you'll find the balance of where you want your tea. Each person is different, and tea is a subjective thing to each of us. So, for example, with my Planter's Mistress, I like to brew it for 4 minutes. There are certain teas like if I'm having a first flush Darjeeling, something like an Okai tea, maybe even something like a Lover's Leap from New Aurelia. I like to brew that for no more than about 3 minutes, 3 to 4. My breakfast teas, I like to do that for 5. Our Planter's Afternoon, I like to have that at 4 minutes. And it's interesting, although I'm brewing this Planter's Mistress at 5 minutes, the Planter's Earl Grey, I'll do that at 4 minutes, you know? So each tea is different, and it really depends on you. And one thing I always tell people is, we can give you a brewing guide, but adapt it to your own, you know? You might find that you might want to have more leaf in your pot. And usually when we brew tea anyway, we do it we do it based on weight. So whenever we use something like this, our actual tea tasting gear, we do that based on leaf. So 2.5 grams goes into one of those infusers. But you know, with an actual pot like this, I know how much leaf I'll use, you know, and that's come from years and years of brewing the same tea in the same vessel, and it varies vessel to vessel. So I would do that. I'll check the time now. So we've got 1 minute 38, and usually what I do around this kind of mark, around the sort of 1 minute mark, is that I start to stir the tea. I'll take the lid off and I'll actually stir the tea, give it one more stir. It just helps with the brewing, and I'll leave that for another minute. And as we get into the minute, I'll then start to pour it out, and then I'll let it sit, and then I'll start to sip and enjoy. So guys, those are my actual tips on how to brew tea. So number 1, make sure you use good tea. Number 2, use good water, freshly drawn from the tap if you're living in a soft water area, into your kettle, boil it up. While it's boiling, add your leaf to your teapot, add your boiling hot water in. Most importantly, stir the pot, leave it to brew for minimum 3 minutes, up to 5 minutes. And then when you get to the last minute of however long you're brewing for, do what I just did, give it a stir midway through, and right at the end I'll show you how as we count down the last 30 seconds here, as we come down to the last 30 seconds, just before I pour it out, I'll give it a stir again. You can see in this pot, one of the reasons why I stir is that all of the tea leaf is actually down at the bottom of that, is down at the bottom of that pot. And when you actually stir that, the whole flavor profile moves, you know, you can see the color, there's a big color change here. It's darker at the bottom, it's lighter at the top. You know, you're able to bring out a lot of that flavor to the top just before you pour it out. So, we are coming to the last 7 seconds. As I said, I'll give it a stir. Now, I've just realized that I didn't actually bring my tea strainer, which is over there. But not to worry, I will use the teepee strainer. Now, if you guys don't want to use a teapot, you can always use a teepee, and you can brew the tea in the actual infuser itself. And you can pull the infuser out, invert the lid, and have your tea. So for example, if I was to show you how a teepee would be used, imagine the leaf is already in here. You'd pull the infuser out, put it on the inverted lid, have no spillage because there is a lip there, and you've got your tea to enjoy. Those are my tips for brewing tea. Join me this Friday at 4 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time. I'm going to be doing afternoon tea here from my kitchen. We'll be pairing our Planter's range of teas with some other single estate teas that I'm going to bring in as well. Pairing those to simple afternoon tea foods that you can enjoy and make at home. So you can join us live, you can make the foods yourself, and you can start to taste along with me as well. If you want to order some good teas, jump on to pmdtea.com, and I will see you Friday at 4 for afternoon tea. Happy sipping, guys. Keep safe.